go deeper into HRV and actually, how people can apply it to their own lot, to their own health. So you want
Yeah,
to,
so if we actually take a look at kind of where we're going in the setup is we're going to start going into because we talked about the eight controllables, and so the eight controllables, nutrition and the gut biome being a big one that we want to touch on. That's one of those eight controllables that kind of move through and touch onto those.
okay, yeah, we can jump to that and go over that.
So when,
So,
if we kind of take a look back at HRV, what was some of the questions from the crew or from the group or from people kind of leaning in, or even yourself, that you wanted to kind of touch back on when it comes to heart rate variability, prior to kind of moving into the big things that impact it?
yeah, so I think, one of the things we touched upon, what is HRV, what does it symbolize? And I was just summarizing earlier on about it's, reflecting the autonomic nervous system. So how, for a lay person, let's start with there. For a lay person, how does that help me with my health? So how would a lay person use that data and apply it to improve their health?
Yeah, I love this question. So when we think about heart rate variability, and I want to take people on this journey. So our body doesn't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, or emotional stress. The response of the body anytime it gets stressed is to create inflammation in some form, be it in the blood vessels, be it in the gut, be it in the brain, be it in the muscle bellies, be it whatever it is. And so because there's stress leading to inflammation, that chronic inflammation leads ultimately to some form of chronic symptom. And that symptom could be a backache, it could be a headache, it could be a stomach ache, it could be difficulty sleeping, it could be rashes on the skin, it could be any type of symptom that we leave with low libido. And in our world, we've just succumbed to these symptoms as being normal. This is just what it takes to be an entrepreneur. This is just what it takes to be a business owner. This is just what it takes to be a spouse. This is just what it takes to be a parent. This is what it takes to age. This is natural in aging. But all of these things are lies. And so chronic stress creates chronic inflammation, which creates chronic symptoms that we ignore, that creates chronic illness. And so when we dial this all back and we start to realize that, hey, HRV is the indicator or the KPI or the measure, the metric telling us, are we adapting to stress and strain positively or are we not? What this now becomes is HRV becomes the metric that we look at every single morning to help us guide us on what habits, actions, and behaviors in these eight controllables: exercise, nutrition, hydration, sleep, environment, immune function, self-care, and mindset, we need to focus on over the course of this day. So going back to your question, here's a perfect example. If I'm just starting to track my HRV, I find, my last month I've had an average of 35. My last week I've had an average of 32, and today I'm at 30. And I start to storytell, and I'm like, the last month I've been traveling. I've gone to 2 different cities. I've gone to 2 different countries. I've gone to 5 different cities. I've done a product launch, and I have been dealing with some intramarital issues, and I haven't been working out or focused on my eating. The first thing that we could do is say, hey, you know what? Tonight, I am going to not drink alcohol. I'm going to get into bed at 10 o'clock p.m. and that's going to be my bedtime. I'm going to do some form of night routine leading up to it, and I'm going to plan for my next trip. And all of a sudden we wake up in the morning and we see that our HRV is 45. Well, those habits and behaviors of not drinking alcohol, having some form of bedtime routine, and then going to bed at 10 p.m., wow, that works really well for your system. It's actually moving stress away from what your body was having to deal with. Conversely, take a look at your HRV and have a couple beers at night and send emails right up until going to bed, or eat a late night meal, or suffer from some type of argument with your kids or your spouse and see what happens to your HRV. And all of a sudden you'll start to realize that your body is responding in that similar facet. And so that's why with the 8 controllables, and what we'll get into is each controllable has about 5 or 6 different baseline habits that are like, eventually will become non-negotiables for you. But these non-negotiables are things that you'll start to iteratively start to create in your routine. For example, in sleep, the sleep controllable, which we'll touch on, we have this 3-2-1-0 rule. So 3 hours before bed, we don't take in any major meals. 2 hours before bed, we stop any type of work. 1 hour before bed, we stop any type of blue light and enter into what we call our parasympathetic routine. Maybe it's stretching, maybe it's breath work, maybe it's a hot shower, maybe it's reading, maybe it's walking your dog, whatever that might be. And so when we really start to sit back and start to say, hey, these are the baseline habits, 3-2-1-0 rule. If we haven't done the 3-2-1-0 rule, don't you dare lean into melatonin. Don't you dare go and start taking a sleeping pill. Don't you dare start with the cooling mattress and the dark out shades, because we haven't prepared ourselves for sleep. These simple habits and behaviors that are free, we have to get done in a true baseline facet so that we can now start to indicate and figure out where can we start to level up. And so the 3-2-1-0 rule is a simple way, but that's kind of what we'll be doing over the next 3 weeks, is taking on 2 or 3 habits every single time: nutrition, sleep, mindset, environment, self-care, immune function, nutrition, hydration, to make sure that we can really help people understand what those baseline habits are, and they can start to utilize heart rate variability as a key metric that can empower them with the behaviors that mean something.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I just want to summarize for everybody. So I'm assuming HRV, the best time to do it is to do it when you sleep, because it's less variables. It's the best way to track it more accurately. Is that correct?
100%. And so the biggest thing that we want to do is we want to get HRV when we're in our most passive state, which is when we're sleeping. It's ultimately the most parasympathetic state we'll ever be in.
Yeah.
And this is why a lot of people, and especially in the fitness space, heart rate variability is so misunderstood. Because oftentimes what they do is they're measuring HRV at 10 a.m. and then at 4 p.m. and then at 8 p.m. And you're like, how do I actually, none of this data makes sense. I've got a high HRV in the afternoon, but a low HRV in the morning. What does that mean? Well, it's hard to really figure that out, right? It's just hard to really figure that out. And so when we track it, we want to make sure we're pulling it at the exact same time in the exact same condition every single time. And that has to be when we're sleeping. And the best way to do that is through some form of wearable. And the unique thing is if you wear an Apple Watch, you're getting HRV. If you have a Whoop band, you're getting HRV. If you have an Oura Ring, you're getting HRV. If you get a Fitbit, a Garmin, a Polar, you're getting HRV. And so you're pulling it passively anyways. Just make sure that you're wearing it through the course of the night.
Awesome. So just a lot of people are asking, HRV is heart rate variability. That's what it stands for. And Justin shared the 3-2-1-0 rule, which is phenomenal, which is awesome. There's a lot of things that we can do, but let me go back. HRV, it's a tool. So, a lot of y'all are following me because, you like my biohacking tips. It's something that you can do for yourself to improve your health. HRV is just another tool. Is it the only diagnostic tool? No, it's not, but it's a tool that can help you identify what your body's trying to tell you. And so utilizing HRV, it can help you. I was actually reading a Harvard article. They were saying that HRV can help you predict, are you about to get sick? Or, are you functioning at optimal levels? It's just another predictor. It's not the only thing. But going back now to his 3-2-1-0 rule, just repeat it. I'm just going to repeat it. So before you go to sleep, no big meals. Y'all should be writing this down. So when y'all are watching these, our J&J show every week, you need to have a little notebook, okay? So 3-2-1-0 rule. 3 hours before your bedtime, no big meals. Two hours before your bedtime, you stop all work, right? 1 hour before your bedtime, you remove blue light. Blue light is what you're staring at right now with your phone. If you're looking at the phone, laptops, TV, those are all blue lights. And we'll go into, like blue blockers and stuff like that later. So these are simple tips that you can do. So Justin's saying, implement these simple tips first before you reach for extra help. Because when you reach for the sleeping pill or even melatonin is a hormone. When you reach for those hormones, it's going to disrupt your body's ability to produce it by itself. So you want to do things to help stimulate your body to do it by itself, because that's what it was born to do. So I guess we can transition now really quickly. We got about 14 minutes to go over gut biome. So let's transition to that.
Yeah, so I want to use this to kind of come into our gut biome and ultimately the habit of nutrition, or the controllable of nutrition. Because when you think about your gut biome, your gut at its essence is truly a second brain. Mm-hmm. And there's such a heavy connection between your gut and your brain in the way that they communicate. We actually have 400 times more melatonin in our gut than is produced by the pineal gland in our brain. So the moment, this is why when you talk about that 3-2-1 rule, when you all of a sudden take in food and a major meal less than within that three-hour window before bed, what's ultimately happening is you're not going to produce the melatonin you need. Thus, you're going to start having to digest that food, and it's going to increase your cortisol level. Your increasing cortisol is going to naturally decrease melatonin levels. And because of this, you're now going to have these receptors in the brain that are full of cortisol and not able to accept the down-regulating factors that ultimately help us go to sleep and help us fall into that deep restful sleep. And so that is why the gut is so important, and we have to make sure that we protect the gut in terms of every aspect of what it has in terms of the bacterial balance and so on. And so when we talk about nutrition, again, I love rules that are like just baseline habits. Anyone that we're working with, again, these baseline habits are at the bottom of the pyramid. But when it comes to nutrition, we also have a second and third pillar where we start to get into DNA, epigenetics, cellular testing, understanding what we're micronutriently deficient in so that we can start to reframe this. But let's go to the baseline habit of nutrition. And again, it's a 3-2-1 rule. 3 meals a day. We want to be having 3 meals a day starting 3 hours after we wake up. And why is that? Think about this. Because this is why they're so intermingled with sleep as well. If we stop eating 3 hours before bed, but then we start eating 3 hours after wake up, and we have an average of, let's just call it 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night, that immediately puts us into a 13 to 14 hour fast naturally. And so all these people on the intermittent fasting kicks eat right up until the moment they go to bed, and then they don't get the best sleep possible. And then they starve themselves until 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon because they're intermittent fasting. But then they've got headaches, then they've got nausea, then they've got the jitters, and then they can't focus really well. And then when they do eat, they overeat. Instead, let's get the real window back. Let's get the real circadian rhythm eating window back. And so that's why I love this 3-2-1 rule. So 3 meals a day. The first meal happens 3 hours after we wake up. 2 pieces of fruit with a protein. We use those as snacks a day. So if we're going to eat, let's say we wake up at 6 a.m., first meal is going to be at 9. It's going to be protein focused. Second, or your snack is going to be, let's call it at 11. It's going to be a piece of fruit with a protein source. Lunch is at 1. Maybe you have a snack with another piece of fruit at 3 or 4. Then you have dinner at 6. Boom, that's your day. That's structured. That's intentional. So 3 hours after you wake up is your first major meal. You have 3 meals a day. You have 2 pieces of fruit with a protein source. And then you have 1 big salad a day. And that can be used as either lunch or dinner. And that 1 big salad a day, people always ask me, well, what do I put in my salad? How much of this should I put in? How much of that? Just as many greens, as many vegetables, as colorful as possible, and add a protein source to it. And that literally becomes your 3-2-1 rule. And I also add a 0 on there. And I say no serving sizes greater than 1. So we figure out what our serving sizes need to be from a protein source, a carbohydrate, fat, and a veggie. So if we're talking about the size of a protein source, it's the palm of your hand. No meals or snacks with a protein source greater than the size of your hand. We talk about the size of a fat, which is the size of your thumb. So no meals are you going to have salad dressing with more fat that would fit in the size of your thumb. When it comes to a vegetable, the size of your fist. When it comes to a carb, it's a cupped hand leveled off. And so 3 hours after you wake up is your first major meal with 3 major meals throughout the day. Number 2 is 2 pieces of fruit a day with a protein source. 1 is 1 big salad with a protein source. And 0 is no serving sizes greater than 1 in proteins, fats, carbs, or veggies.
Awesome. So hopefully everybody was taking some notes like I was. I want to go back. There's a lot of information Justin just spewed out, so I know many of y'all are going to want to rewatch it multiple times. But I want to go back to his first point of saying why nutrition, why the gut biome is so important. He gave you like how to eat, which is also very important. But if you really caught what he said about melatonin is produced in your gut. So think about it. If you are eating late at night, then your body's not busy producing melatonin. And so for those of y'all who don't know what melatonin does, melatonin helps you go to sleep, stay asleep. It is a hormone that helps regulate your sleep. So that's produced a lot in your gut. But if you're eating a big meal or you're eating late at night, then your gut is, your body is focused on digesting and not necessarily focused on producing melatonin. And no wonder that night you won't have a good night's sleep. So you see, these basic lifestyle habits make huge changes. I like to tell people, when you look at your doors in your house, how big are the hinges? They're small. Small hinges swing big doors. So what that means is these small, it may seem like, some of y'all may be thinking, I know that. Well, yes, we all know it, but the problem is we don't do it consistently. These little changes, these small hinges will make drastic changes in your health. You don't need to reach for the medicine cabinet before you do all of these stuff, right? And so super important about making sure that we position our bodies in the best, I would say, put them in the best position to do their job. Stop making it hard for your body to do its job. Your body was built perfectly to do its job. Now, Justin, there was a question. What if someone's working the night shift? What do they do then?
It's a really great question. And so my question for that individual would be, do you work a night shift all the time? Or do you work a night shift like a fireman would, where you work a night shift and then for your next 4 shifts, you're on the day shift? And so that would give me a little bit more context to it. But if you're actually working the night shift and that's all you ever work and that's the type of job you are, then what we need to make sure that we do is we just inverse and flip this, so that what ends up happening is your 10 p.m. literally would become like your 10 a.m.
Hmm.
And it's a tough lifestyle to live because your social life and everything else. But we really need to make sure that we're consistent with a bedtime, consistent with a wake time, even if it's flipped from what we naturally would with the sun. And the best thing that you can do is when you're sleeping is get dark out shades in that room. Try to keep your lights as dim as possible. And then when you wake up, even though it's late at night, get yourself a red light or turn on as many lights as possible. Make sure they're really bright and they're stimulating the photons in your eyes and on your
Hmm.
skin that are ultimately going to start to trick the mind into thinking, oh, it's daytime. I need to produce as much adrenaline and as much cortisol as possible so that I can give you energy to be able to operate in this sense. And so that's what I would do. And then also making sure, and it's sometimes hard if you're on the night shift, but making sure again that whenever you go to bed, you stop eating 3 hours before bed. That's so critical. And I know oftentimes when people are on night shift, I've worked with a ton of people on night shift, because what happens is you have this product in your brain called ghrelin. And ghrelin is what gives you this feeling of satiety. And when you're lacking ghrelin, it's called the ghrelin gremlin. And so when you have this ghrelin gremlin inside of you, it's like, oh, I just need to eat all the food. I need to get as much in as I can, because your brain starts to think that it's starving because it's not using the glucose in a positive way and it's not getting to your brain. So what ends up happening is that we need to start, again, giving ourselves that periodized window and doing it very intentionally about determining when it is that we eat and when it is that we stop eating, so that we don't continually overeat when we're on that night shift. It's a tough thing to be able to do. And when we start to, I've got another question here of like waking up and then going back to sleep. The hard part with that is that we just create really dissociated sleep, and we don't stay in, we no longer stay in these deep states of sleep. And so we're constantly living in this state of light sleep. And so we're going to have brain
Hmm.
fog, we're going to have fatigue, it increases risk of dementia, increases risk of Alzheimer's, increases risk of high blood pressure, increases risk of type 2 diabetes because of the blood sugar fluctuations, all of these things that we ultimately want to stay away from. So making sure that we can, again, the night shift is not a death sentence. It makes it harder to be able to operate in day-to-day life, but we still want to make sure that we go to bed at the same time and we wake up at the same time, and then
Hmm.
still stay with that 3-2-1 rule.
Yeah, I'll add one, just another simple change, because I do have some of my team members that work night shifts, and this is what I tell them, and this is hard. I know it's going to be hard. When I say it, you're going to be like, oh, it's impossible. So, number one, I'll follow what Justin was saying. Routine. Our bodies love routine. Just think about it very simple. Our bodies like to know, when can I rest? When do I have permission from you to rest? And then when are you going to feed me? When do I need to work? So having routine of letting the body know, your own body know, this is when you're going to rest and this is when I expect you to work, right? Then your body's going to be functioning at a more optimal level. The second thing in regards to night shift, what I tell my team members is that if you're going to work the night shift, then you have to live that life 7 days a week. You can't go Monday through Friday. Like, I know nurses do this a lot. Monday through Friday, I do the night shift, and on the weekends, I go back to not being a vampire. Well, that's like if you were to fly from here to Australia, that's like every week you're trying to get rid of jet lag. Like every day your body's dealing with that. And dealing with jet lag is stressful. So that's why nurses cannot do that for extended time. Or if they do, they see their health decline drastically. It's because you're constantly taking your body, through that jet lag. So if you're going to work the night shift for a couple of years, stick with that schedule, Sunday to Sunday, even the weekends. I know it's hard because of family and activities, but it's going to be the best for your health. And so We are at time. I do want to just wrap it up. Um, those of y'all who are already on, obviously you're following me. I want you to follow my buddy Justin. I'll put his handle also on the comments. And we're gonna come back every week for the next, I think, six more weeks, 5 more weeks, 5 more weeks, right here, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to go through all of what he calls the 8 controllables. One of them was today, was nutrition, right? So show up here. These are recorded, so they will be in my feed and it'll be in his feed, and I will make it on YouTube to put it on YouTube. But again, hopefully everybody enjoyed this show. Make sure you type in, we're reading your comments and questions at the same time. So you show up live, we'll answer your questions live. All right, guys, we will see y'all next week.